Okay, let's see. So we're just going to wait a little bit to see who all shows up. This is obviously the first one of these. So this is new to me. We'll see how this goes. But yeah, as people start to file in here, I guess this is obviously going to be recorded. We'll just start to answer some questions. I plan on talking about a good amount of stuff, such as low back pain, sciatica, some different strategies for that. Might even do some screen shares, but yeah, we're just going to wait a little bit and see what happens. Who all shows up? Let's see here. We got one person in here. So as you're filing in here, if you have some questions, you go ahead and start throwing them in the chat. I'm planning on these to be about an hour long, maybe in the future. Probably today we'll stick to about 30 or so minutes, but we'll kind of see with it. Hopefully my audio sounds decent. I'm going to wait another couple minutes and then we will start talking. And our one person left. That's okay. I'm imagining a lot of you guys are going to be watching this stuff after it's recorded. So, oh, we got two people. Look at that. But yeah, I imagine a lot of people will be watching this after this is recorded. So, like I said, we'll just have some different questions, hopefully popping up in the chat as we go through this. But we'll just kind of start with some low back pain stuff. So, I've been getting a lot of questions lately about low pain or low back pain. Obviously, because it's like one of the most common injuries or pains that we'll see. Specifically with deadlifting, all those types of things. But what I'm looking at with those, my pelvis model here. What I'm looking at with those types of injuries, we'll start with just like generalized low back pain, right? So if we're having low back pain around this region at the top of the pelvis, I'm often going to be thinking about what are the hips able to do. So is there rotation available at the hips? Are they compensating and using their low back a lot of the times? And when I say compensating, I mean literally like if your hips aren't moving as well as they could, your low back a lot of the times will make up for that. So a good example is someone who doesn't have hip internal rotation. You might see that side present with like a hip hike during, hip motions or mobility like that. So it's less about like your back is what is causing this problem, if that makes sense. It's sort of a victim, in my opinion. Like it's overworked because down below isn't working as well as it could. Now that starts to magnify as someone continues to move and does this stuff. And maybe there's just a lot of work that they're doing, or they have that one event where just like they hear a pop, something like that. And that's where we get this cascade of different, diagnosis or actual injuries, such as like a slip disc, something like that, that could be giving them trouble, right? So a slip disc, sciatica, so feeling some pain on the backside of the pelvis, that type of stuff. It's just a next step from them having that trouble with like their hip mobility overall. So hopefully that's making sense. That's, again, just how I look at it. Obviously, everybody's going to be different. Here, I'm going to try this chat overlay, see what this does. No, nothing there. But that's really just how I'm looking at this stuff. So the obvious thing to do in these circumstances is to go after hip mobility, right? Whatever it is that they're lacking, just try to get this stuff working a little bit better. And then a lot of the times the symptoms in their back, the sciatica type stuff, starts to go away. So pretty freaking simple. I think a good example of this in a test that I will use for this often is just going to be like toe touch measurements. So can someone touch their toes? Can they do a straight leg raise? So for those people that, are in the Facebook group and you're doing some of this testing yourself for maybe like the free posture mobility challenge, you'll be doing some of these tests like the toe touch. And if you're having trouble getting down there, that's a good example of you not having that ability to internally rotate the hips or move the hips as well as they could. We'll often see compensations. So let's see if I can do a screen share on this guy. That will actually help quite a bit. Where's it at? Is my audio okay? If anyone's in the chat, can they let me know if my audio is decent? And I'll be able to give you some more feedback. Where's it at? I can't screen share, I don't believe. Oh, well. So I'll show you guys. So you'll see a lot of these compensations. Someone will, go down to touch their toes and they do this big rounding. That's them just using their upper back to start to make up for the lack of mobility that they can get into the backside of their pelvis or their hips. So if you're seeing that type of compensation, again, don't look at the upper back as being the problem. That's what your body's trying to use to just get around the limited mobility at the hips. So I'm realizing that these live streams are just kind of a big rant in some ways. So again, if you guys have questions, comments, thank you so much for telling me that. But yeah, if you guys have questions, anything like that, I will answer them as I go, try to give you some ideas. I'll even get up and do some exercises too. I'm thinking that this will probably, it's only 1 o'clock Eastern time right now, but it hopefully will go for probably like at least 30 minutes. So getting more into, again, low back pain, sciatica, that type of stuff. So we've already kind of discussed a bit about testing, measurements, what we would expect to see. It's apparent. Okay. Thank you. I'll try not to walk away from the mic, but when we're really thinking about, these injuries and the lack of mobility and stuff that's happening, we're really just trying to think about where the work isn't being done and then where it is happening. So again, it's not happening at the hips, but it is happening at the low back or something like that. So when you're seeing in just like the process for dealing with like, any type of issue when it comes to like a slip disc, sciatica, whatever the heck it is, you really just want to make sure that that actual injury is calm, right? So, there's not much we can do besides surgery for a slip disc. You kind of just have to wait it out and let the body naturally heal in some ways. So then the name of the game is like, well, if I'm going to play the waiting game, I'm not going to go through surgery where they like cut off, a part of this disc or whatever. So you're just going to wait it out, let your body heal. Well, that's going to take some time, but through that process, you're just trying to keep your symptoms calm and trying to still work on the hip mobility, still work on the stuff that you can, but just know it's going to be like a roller coaster of a journey in some ways. So some days you're going to feel okay. Some days you're going to feel bad. And that's just going to be, don't let your pain necessarily guide you in these circumstances. Like obviously respect it, but at least with my injury, my pain would just set off for whatever freaking reason. I could sleep bad one day and then it's like just killing me. But I used my mobility And when I say mobility, like my testing, can I touch my toes? Can I do that? If I was more restricted in, say, my toe touch, 9 times out of 10, I had more pain and more discomfort. Again, that was just my situation. So, looking at your test to try to guide you through that process while your body is going through natural healing processes is really just the name of the game when it's coming to recovering from this stuff. So, if you guys have questions about this, again, just let me know because I'm just rambling at this point. And talking about my own injuries and back pain and everything. So, I'm just going to keep going with it if you guys don't have questions. Where'd it go? There we are. Perfect. I did have Victor asking in the Facebook group about the cervical issues that we may see related to postural restoration. So, issues is the wrong word here, but pattern, right? So, we're talking about the TMCC or whatever the acronym is. And basically, this is just, in my opinion, and this isn't for you, Victor, but it's when we're seeing facial asymmetries that are happening. They're very common. And when I say common, I mean literally everybody has this pattern. It's built in, just like if you are familiar with the left AIC pattern or right BC pattern, it's basically just the cervical version of those other two PRI models. They're not the first people to talk about this stuff. There's DNS systems, there's functional patterns, there's all kinds of people who have like talked about some kind of pattern in the body or asymmetrical pattern in the body. So PRI is not the first. I do think they do a great job of explaining it from an educational standpoint. So like, here's a left AIC, here's what we should expect to see from the body, potential mobility limitations, how someone might walk, how someone might squat, that type of stuff. So the cervical pattern that we're talking about here is basically you're going to have a jaw deviation a little bit more to the left. You're going to have a head turn. You're going to lack rotation, cervical rotation to the left. So, Victor, when we were talking about this in the chat, I was like, in my opinion, it's not necessarily the basis of anybody who has pain or anything like that. I have seen it like just restrict that left, cervical rotation or turning your head to the left. And if I see that, I'm just going after that to restore it. One of my favorite exercises to do that is basically just like grab a cable or a band and it's pulling sort of across the body, like so. It's going to open up the backside, like kind of stretch out these muscles up here, your upper trap and all of that. And just breathe into that. You can even like hold on to a chair. I'm further away from the mic here. Here we go. But you can hold on to a chair and just kind of turn into that. Take a couple deep breaths. And that's going to start to rotate and get that cervical rotation happen. That's really as far as I go when it comes to that. If you're trying to like actually change your face structure, and like you don't like that one side's like drooped or something like that is happening, I think there's myofunctional therapy, which is very, very helpful for this. But you got to think like you're not really going to be able to change bones all that often, and your results are going to be mixed if you're going at this from that approach or that goal, I should say. So just something to keep in mind. Get your left cervical rotation. And to answer your final question, Victor, on that one, you were wanting to know if like its connections to swayback posture, which also got me down the rabbit hole of talking about low back pain on this stuff and all that. But again, it's just like a basic pattern that we're seeing in the body, just like a left AIC pattern, just like a right BC pattern, or whatever system you use to talk about the asymmetries of the organ systems inside. It's there, right? It's not something to be fixed. It's not something you can fix. It's something to be managed, I will say. So if you find yourself always lacking cervical rotation, you should probably improve that cervical rotation and see what happens with it, right? So that's how I'm looking at that stuff. But it's not something to necessarily like freak out about, if that makes sense. Its connections to swayback posture, again, it can present with any posture. right? I guess it could be a bit more magnified with like some rounded shoulders or some forward head and a sway back posture, potentially, but it would really just depend. Um, like you might see it more or present more with that population or a sway back posture, rounded head, forward head, and all that, than you would with someone like an anterior tilt or a PEC pattern, as PRI will talk about. So again, getting a bit in the weeds with this stuff, but yeah, hopefully that's all kind of making sense on this at this point. So, is that pattern going to cause pain? I don't know. It's dependent on you, what's happening to you, your movements you're doing, the stress in your life, all this stuff. Pain is multifactorial. It's really just, there's a lot to it when it comes to that actually like causing pain. 9 times out of 10, biomechanics don't cause pain directly. They can be a factor in your pain, but it's not like I'm lacking rotation and you're completely screwed. You're going to have pain 100%. So yeah, that's just kind of how I'm looking at that stuff. Any questions, guys? Anything, throw it at me. I've already talked about low back pain. I've already talked about, straight leg raise, touching your toes, trying to improve those measurements to improve your hip mobility. So that way we can offload the low back. I guess what I can do is talk a little bit about progressions with this. So there's a lot of different exercises you can do to improve the mobility that we have at the hips, like thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of options, right? So you could pretty much do anything. I don't really care what you do. I have my stuff that seems to work well. Ask away, go ahead. But yeah, I'm going to keep talking about the exercise at least. But in terms of like improving this, one of my favorite exercises is definitely like just trying to get people to deadlift or do some kind of hinging variation. So we can do that in multiple ways. A downward dog, in my opinion, is the easiest way. And it's something that really helped with my symptoms when I had a disc herniation. Doing a downward dog, man, like every single day, I would just hang out there. Yeah, you could look at it as a hamstring stretch, whatever the heck you want, but it's basically going after hip internal rotation. Super helpful. So I would do that all the time. That's probably the easiest exercise for someone to do to start to improve some of their low back pain, in my opinion, or at least gain hip internal rotation. So highly recommend doing something like that, but then just scaling up exercises to start loading that mobility once you get it. And that's really like what I do. My online training is literally like, let's meet you where you're at. What's your mobility? How bad does it hurt? And then find an exercise that you can do well without pain. And then as that stuff improves, we're going to follow right behind it to try to load it up, do the different things like that. So, that might look like you go from only doing downward dogs to getting on one of those back extension machines and just holding a straight line, right? If you've done the Broken to Beast protocol, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's the glute focused back extensions or like the yielding hamstring isometrics. You basically just hold yourself at a 45-degree angle with your ankles locked in place. I really wish I could figure out the screen share. I'll get that for the next live call next week. But you basically just hold that position and roast your hamstrings, roast your glutes, and then that eventually turns into an actual hinge motion at the hips. Start doing some little pulses. If you're a client and you're dealing with this stuff, I'm thinking of 2 guys right now who I have working on this. But then eventually that's going to turn into an RDL, right? A Romanian deadlift, either with dumbbells, barbells, whatever the heck it is. Start pulling from the floor and you just scale that stuff up until you can load it up, get stronger with it. Simple as that, right? So think in these terms, like especially with back pain, sciatica, all of that. You just have to meet your body where it's at. Let symptoms calm, let the body heal. And then as that is improving, you're matching it with progress, with more dynamic activities, things like that. Okay. I'm gonna butcher your name. Tobrice? I don't know. I'm terrible at this. What's your question, man? You got one? Maybe you're typing it out. I can say your last name, Walter. Looking through some of these other questions that I had over on Facebook. That said, if you guys aren't in the Facebook group, the Broken to Beast community, and you're over here on YouTube, I highly recommend checking that out. The way you get into it is basically just download the free posture mobility program that I have. It goes through everything. I guess this is a plug for it now. But it's basically just going through the three main types of posture: anterior tilt. Here we go. All right. Oh, I don't know, man. Me 123. I think that's some spam. But what I was saying is, if you've downloaded that free program, the challenge, whatever you want to call it, the 7-day posture mobility challenge, you get access to that Facebook group. You can ask more direct questions, and we'll talk about this stuff. I probably won't be doing lives on YouTube every week like I will be over there, but I will be doing the lives maybe once a month on YouTube, just depending on, how this stuff goes. Like I said, I got 4 of you guys in here. People are in and out. We'll see how the people like this at the end, when they're watching it once it's posted and all that stuff. But yeah, so we got over in that Facebook group we have 61 members right now. Not a ton. I want to keep it pretty exclusive. So people that are actually, wanting to, what's the word? How should I say this nicely? People who are motivated. I want to be in that group, ask questions, and just really start to, connect and find someone locally for you that can help you out if you have issues, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, definitely check that out. I've got some links on my YouTube page that you can check out to get into that Facebook group. But yeah, if you guys have any other questions, just like keep throwing them in here. I'm probably going to stay live for just like another 10, 15 minutes or so. And so if you have anything else, you guys just let me know. I'm going through the Facebook chat to see if there's anything here. Where'd it go? Okay, so I did have a question about improving a little bit of swayback posture. So we already kind of talked about that and the cervical stuff and how that connects to swayback. So we'll go into swayback posture and what we sort of expect to see with that. So in terms of swayback posture, really all I'm thinking about with swayback posture is that your hips are driving in front of your shoulders and your ankles. So it's like all of this is all just going forward, and then your ankles are back here, your shoulders are up here. Okay. So when you're in that position, basically what it's telling us is that you're having tightness, back side of the pelvis, potentially the lower back, and we're probably going to be externally rotating. So these femurs are going to go backwards, if that makes sense. If anyone can kind of imagine that. So like you're clenching the crap out of your butt is basically what's happening. Okay. So all this squeezes, that shoves your hips forward, your upper body goes backwards, and you can get into that rounded shoulders, forward head posture. Okay. You can look at all the different ranges of motion you want for this and be like, well, they need X, Y, and Z, hip internal rotation, blah, 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 blah. I think that's great for teaching other coaches and professionals, what they need to look for, but for hopefully who I'm hoping are not just coaches in this live call and watching it. For the average person, just do the opposite shape that your body's making. So if you stand up and your butt and everything's squeezed forward, right? I'm going to walk away from the mic for a second. I'm going to get quiet. But if you're in this posture, literally just do the opposite. It's that simple. So like, go that way. Get things to push you backwards. So I already talked about something that would do that. Getting your hips back in a downward dog. Perfect example. Inchworm movements. That's a really, really good one that can help you out. See, man, thank you for being on here. Inchworms, super helpful. But again, just do things that are creating the opposite shape that your standing posture is presenting with, right? That's simple. Do not overcomplicate it more than that. It's easy and to get on some of the YouTube and some of these videos and just get lost in the sauce, right? You got to see all this stuff. And it's like, well, maybe it's my foot. Maybe it's my vision. Maybe it's my cranial, blah, 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 or my rib cage and how I'm breathing. Those definitely probably have an influence, but just make the opposite shape that your body's making. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to see some progress. Okay. So that's really how I look at swayback posture. It's just getting your hips behind you, learning how to hinge, and going from there. Anything that's left is dust in the corners, in my opinion. Okay. All right, guys. So we are at the 25-minute mark. I guess I did start a little bit earlier here than I thought I would, because I was trying to make sure this would work. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, please put them in the chat. I appreciate the support so far. It's been super, super helpful. Like I said, I'm wanting to build these out to be, I don't know what this live is going to turn into, but let's see what happens if I do them every Friday for a year and if it's able to help. Let's see. Where are we at, guys? Where are we at? Audio still sounding good, I believe. I guess I will take some requests, especially for folks that are over on YouTube. If there's any specific videos you guys want me to make, I'm trying my best to create YouTube videos, but they are long. It's a process. It's difficult to make compared to like Instagram posts. But if I have some things that I can make, like right now I'm working on another scapular winging video, and we can talk about that on this live as well. But basically making another video, scapular winging. The last one I put out was like 30 minutes, and it's, I think, very informative, and it talks about like the Apley stretch test and all of that. And I think it's definitely helpful, but that is a long video, just like this. Like, I don't know how many people are actually going to watch 30 minutes of this shit. But in terms of like scapular winging and what I'm going to put out there, I'm just going to try to make it as short as possible, 1 or 2 exercises, see what happens with it. So we'll talk about scapular winging because that actually does connect to swayback and some of this other stuff that we talked about. So scapular winging, and I've gotten a lot of questions about this over on Instagram recently because I have gotten some pretty good results lately. But basically it's just telling us how tight your chest is, right? If your scapula wants to pop off, you reach behind your back and it's like coming up. It's just telling us how tight all of this is on the front. It's very similar, in my opinion, to like a swayback posture. So I think, in my opinion, and this is just how I look at the body, but your chest, your pec major muscles are the opposite, or like not the opposite. They are the glutes of the upper body. So if you're in a swayback posture and everything's shoved forward, your glutes are tight, right? We already kind of talked about that. So all this is going shoved that way. For forward head, rounded shoulders, everything's sunk in. So like these glutes, which is weird to say and like point to my glutes, but like if this is all tight on the front, well, then it's going to be tough to like get your arm behind you, right? Depends on the person and their joint laxity and all that stuff, but typically it would tell us. And if you're seeing a scapula popping up like that, that will also tell us like, hey, this is like super, super tight. And there might even be some additional tightness on the backside. Okay. So you can kind of just take this, and this is like a funny thing I picked up from Alex Effer, because just like looking at different parts of the body, but you know, the pelvis is this way. You flip it over and it's like, well, here's your shoulder. Obviously it's not perfect, but this would be sort of like a rib cage, all of that stuff, your cervical spine, blah, blah, blah. But you just kind of have to think of it as like, you just flip this structure in some ways, and that will start to like tell you like directions of like where bones are going. So I don't know if that's helpful or not, but I think it gives you guys some ideas. It is. Thank you, Henson. That is a fantastic question. So you can definitely have an anterior tilt or a posterior tilt with swayback posture. Grab my pelvis. I didn't think I would use this all this much on here, but so just to kind of answer that, excuse me, when you have, so again, definition, in my opinion, of swayback. The pelvis is shoved in front of the ankles and the shoulders, right? All that is pushed forward. So you can have an orientation of that pelvis relative to the rest of your body. But that pelvis can still tilt forward and backwards. It's just like the sway back depend is talking more about how pushed forward the pelvis is, whereas the tilt, literally in the name, is talking about if that pelvis is tilted forward or not. So you can be in a neutral spot, everything's stacked and still have an anterior tilt. You can have this shoved forward, anterior tilt. I don't ever really see anybody who's like way back behind their ankles, because at that point, they're probably using a walker or not able to stand very well, but they like are shoving their hips back behind them. But they would actually probably have quite a bit of an anterior tilt. So I hope that answers your question, Henson. You definitely can have an anterior tilt and a sway back at the same time. And that would really just tell us like, man, your freaking back is super, super tight, as well as your glutes and everything, like kind of pushing those structures forward. Okay. All right, guys, we got like another 4 minutes here because I'm running out of things to talk about. So if you guys have some more questions here, just let me know. But we're kind of winding down. Future of these streams, I am going to get my really nice DSLR camera, hopefully hooked up to this, so that way it will look nicer than my current webcam. The webcam is nice and wide, but at least at this point, I think the DLSR camera will be really, really nice. Be able to see some more, at least be streaming in like 1080p or something like that. So yeah, I think that'll be like a good addition to this. I might even do maybe like if I do continue to do these on YouTube, do like a little pre-question, something like that. I guess I can answer in these last like 3 or so minutes some Instagram questions I had on my last Q&A. I got asked, any advice on prolapse? So again, I refer out probably for any pelvic floor issues, unless it is a male that is dealing with pelvic floor issues. Females, in my opinion, like it's not that I can't help you, but I just think you probably are going to be more comfortable working with another female when it comes to like some prolapse type things. So I know enough to be dangerous, but in most cases, I would go to a pelvic floor specialist with that. This person asked, any idea why push-ups and dips may be causing them pelvic floor discomfort? This is not talking about prolapse or incontinence. If you don't know what incontinence is, just Google it. But if someone is probably having some of this like pelvic floor discomfort with upper body activities, for example, I think of this as more of a bracing issue. So you're having someone that is like overly squeezing their six pack, or they're overly like, without even realizing it, clenching at the pelvic floor. And that may just be creating this like compressive force that's restricting blood flow, restricting movement, all that kind of stuff. And that is what is kind of causing some issues for someone at that point. So, and that, may just like create like a cramping or a soreness or anything like that, and giving them trouble there. So that's really how I look at that one. I would find ways, like maybe you just take a step back from dips. Maybe you take a step back from, I wouldn't say push-ups, like you're probably pretty strong, but just make sure you're not like overly bracing, overly squeezing with this, and kind of see where that goes for you. So just learning how to move with, and I know this is opposite to what a lot of people say, but like, I don't cue people to squeeze their core when they work out anymore. I think unless you're hitting like a maximal lift or you're wearing a belt, you really don't need that. I would rather someone just be able to like let their body react, right? So if you're already consciously squeezing all of this and that's bracing you, so then you can move, like you're not letting the body react on its own. And when I say react, like imagine sprinting across a street, to get out of the way of a car coming at you. like that's a reaction. You're just like in the moment, move, right? We want a piece of that, in my opinion, when we train. So you're trying to just let your body react, chill the hell out, or not chill, react, but like create tensions and pressures when it needs to, dependent on the environment. Hopefully that made sense. But yeah, just let the body kind of react with that stuff. Another question, Luffy versus Zoro, who takes the win? This is a One Piece anime thing. I don't watch One Piece, but I said that Gold Experience Requiem from JoJo is going to wipe the floor with them because it's like the most broken character I've ever seen in any anime. So it's, I highly suggest JoJo, but this is not a anime channel or anime live. So yeah, that's really all the questions I have here, guys. We've been on here for about 35 minutes at this point. Any cueing tips for heavy benching? Yes. So one, I would refer out to really, really strong people. That's where I've learned probably the most from how to bench better. So my coach is Matt Domney. He's with Compound Performance. Super great guy, extremely strong individual, and he's taught me a lot. In terms of what I've learned from him and what has greatly improved my benching is allow yourself to, round, but don't let your ribs, or I'm sorry, not round, extend, but don't let your ribs flare. You don't want the ribs poking out. So it's just like, and you kind of have to find what suits you best for your body. But that extension is setting you up for success to make a stable surface. So that way you can control that bar path. The next best cue is leg drive. So I would go on YouTube, just look up leg drive benching, and you're going to see 1,000 results. But I personally, and what's worked for me is just feet flat on the floor. Some people like their toes on the floor. But as I press up, I'm thinking about driving my foot, shaking everything when I do that. But I'm thinking about driving my feet into the ground, almost like I'm doing a leg extension, to like work the quads in some ways. And that's really helped my bench increase. I don't have the best bench by any means. I'm more of a, unfortunately, my lower body is way stronger than my bench, which sucks. Kills my ego, but yeah. But thank you for that question, Henson. That's I like talking about training stuff in training form. So happy to talk about that more. I'll give you guys like another 2 minutes, I guess, for like any more questions. If not, then we're going to be signing off here in just a moment. Okay. I think we're going to sign this off, guys. So I really appreciate everybody who, popped into this first live stream. This is about what I was expecting. Actually, probably a little bit more. I was expecting no one to show up. I'm not going to lie. But I'm happy to have you guys in here asking questions. Hopefully my rants and rambles were helpful. Just going to try to do more of these, connect with you guys, just try to be as helpful as possible when it comes to this. A lot of the posts and everything I do. Oh, here we go. It's sent through. All right. This is our last question, guys. Okay. So on my right, let it stuck. Like my left side pelvis is holding it down. My left side has more internal rotation than right. Okay. Mr. Walter, because I cannot pronounce your first name. What I would suggest is, I just not suggest. My next question would be, how are you measuring internal rotation? Is it seated, like the seated at 90 degrees? Or are you measuring this as a proxy measurement? And same with the shoulder. Like, are you measuring internal rotation here? Or are you measuring as a proxy measurement with like extension? I personally do not like to use hip internal rotation measurements. Okay, laying down. Your hip's probably at 90 degrees. I typically don't like to test it there just because it's not a very clear test. There's a lot of things that can happen, like your knee coming in, your foot flaring out. It doesn't just give us like the most clear results. You might get some like false positives with that. So one, I would change your testing measures, maybe focus more on like a straight leg raise and a shoulder extension test. So those are like in literally all my programs that I have. And if you're having trouble with that stuff, get in the Facebook group and ask some questions. But like, I would definitely value a shoulder extension and a straight leg raise way more to tell me what's happening at the pelvis than a shoulder internal or a hip internal rotation test. And that's just what's worked for me and what's given me the best results. Either way, I'm not sure what you're looking for with this question. What's kind of happening. So like, I guess your left side pelvis holding it down. Not really sure what that means. Maybe you have some like hip hike stuff going on. I've got a video on YouTube. It's a little long-winded from what I've heard of people in the comments, but that might help you out a little bit in testing that. So, but yeah, guys, I'm going to get signed off here. I really appreciate you guys hopping on this live stream. I hope this was helpful. I hope this, okay. Mr. Walter, I would go check out that video. I think it'll have a better explanation for you. So just type in WAFIT lateral pelvic tilt and we'll kind of see what happens there. Yeah, you're welcome. But I'm going to sign off here, guys. Really happy to have you guys on here. Again, I'll probably be like on here for like 30 minutes, 60 minutes, depending every Friday. I'll see if I want to keep YouTube going, but yeah, guys, it was great. This was fun. Kind of hearing myself talk, and I will see you guys in the next one. Okay. Y'all take care. Peace.